Rope digs into his wrists before he can even understand why. It's coarse, soaked with rain, tight enough that he can feel his pulse fighting beneath it. His arms are forced behind his back as two guards shove him onto the cold floor, the impact sending a tremor through his body. He doesn't cry out. Mateo Rojas has learned that pain does not need an audience. Lantern light sways above him, throwing fractured shadows across the stone. Nothing in the room moves except that trembling flame, but everything feels like it's waiting. Waiting for someone to decide his fate. Waiting for a judgment he didn't know he was on trial for. He saved her. That much is still clear in his mind, even though the memory is burned in smoke and panic. The crack of splintering wood, the choking heat. Mistress Isidora Valdez gasping for air as flames wrapped her skirts like a hungry hand. His hands pulled her free. His arms carried her when her legs failed. His body shielded hers when the carriage toppled and shattered into embers. And now, she stands 2 steps away from him, silent. Isidora doesn't look like a woman who was nearly killed. She doesn't look grateful. She doesn't even look curious. She observes him with strange stillness, like she's studying an animal caught in a trap. The guards press his shoulders down harder when he tries to raise his head. But Mateo's gaze still finds hers, just long enough to see something in her eyes that chills him deeper than any rope or stone floor. Not fear, not gratitude. Something colder, something calculated. His chest tightens, not from the ropes, but from the realization that she is deciding something about him, and whatever it is, it has nothing to do with fairness. The guards do not wait for orders. They already know this process. They act as if this moment was expected long before the fire ever happened. Had the rescue changed nothing? Or had it changed everything in a way he could not understand? Mistress Isidora steps closer, her shoes clicking softly against the stone. She crouches just enough that the lamplight touches half her face, leaving the other half swallowed in shadow. She speaks, but her voice is not trembling, not shaken by the fear of death or memory of smoke. Instead, it carries a quiet authority, like this outcome had always belonged to her. Mateo Rojas, she says, and his name sounds like a verdict. You intervened in matters beyond your station. The ropes pull tighter as one guard lifts his arms with a jerk, forcing his head down again. Mateo's jaw clenches, his breath steady, not defiant but controlled, like a man who has lost many things in life and refuses to lose himself too. I did not act for reward, he answers. His voice is low, roughened by smoke and restraint, but unbroken. I acted to save a life. Isidora's expression does not soften. If anything, she seems even more resolved. Some actions, she murmurs, create debts that cannot remain free. Her words strike him harder than the ropes. Debt? For saving her? Is she claiming ownership over his act of humanity? Or is there something deeper she refuses to reveal? The guards lift him to his feet, still bound. His wrists throb from the circulation strangled by rope. He stands not as a hero, not as a servant, but as someone who is being claimed. Mistress Isidora straightens, the lamplight trembling across her pale gloves. She gives a silent nod and the guards begin to drag him away. He doesn't resist. He doesn't beg. He only watches her face, searching for a reason, a hint, a crack in her resolve. He finds none. She turns away from him before he disappears through the corridor. As if the matter is settled, as if saving her life was never an act of courage. Only an act of possession. He saved her life once, and now she seems determined to break his. The corridor they drag Mateo through is narrow, but the echo of his footsteps sounds endless. Rain taps against the tall windows, streaking the glass like pale veins across a cold body. Lanterns along the walls flicker as though struggling to stay alive, their light trembling over his bound hands. The guards do not speak. Their silence feels intentional, as though words might reveal too much. At the end of the hallway waits a small, iron-buttoned door. One guard unlocks it with a ring of keys that clinks like distant chimes, sharp and hollow. The door opens to reveal a chamber that is neither cell nor room, something in between. It's sparse, dim, and not meant for comfort. A single chair, a narrow table, and a window too small for escape, but large enough to let him see the storm outside. They force him into the chair, tying his wrists to the wooden arms. Matteo doesn't fight. He knows force serves no purpose. Instead, he studies the edges of the room, trying to understand its intent. It is not a place of punishment, yet it is not a place of rest. It feels like a pause, a decision waiting to be made. Mistress Isadora enters moments later, her footsteps softer than the rain. She sends the guards away with a quiet gesture. The door closes, leaving only the storm's whisper and the sound of her gloves smoothing across her sleeves like she's adjusting a roll rather than clothing. She stands before him, measured, almost serene. "You acted without permission," she says, as though repeating a rule he should already know. "I acted to save you," Matteo replies. His words are calm, but there's a weight behind them. He isn't pleading. He's simply stating truth. She walks toward the small window, the storm's light brushing her profile. "There are boundaries," she says softly. "Lines that protect order. When they are crossed, consequences." Ripple. Her voice is not angry. If it were, he might understand it. Instead, it's analytical, detached. She speaks not as a saved woman grateful for life, but as a ruler concerned her authority has been weakened by being rescued. Matteo realizes then what her silent cruelty is: fear of obligation. In saving her life, he forced her into an unchosen debt, and power cannot bear to owe anything. He answers, not with defiance, but clarity. "A life cannot be owned." "Not yours, not mine." She turns toward him, and her eyes narrow ever so slightly. Not in rage, but in disturbance. His words press against her carefully constructed world, threatening its seams. "Perhaps," she says quietly, "you misunderstand. Gratitude is not the question." She steps closer. The lantern near the table flickers, casting light up her face, leaving her expression half hidden, half revealed. "The question," she continues, "is how to ensure such interference does not happen again. Interference, not rescue. Not loyalty. Not courage. Interference. Matteo feels something shift inside him. Not a breaking, but a warning flame. A quiet strength demanding patience, not rebellion. He knows how chains work. Not all are made of iron. Some are formed from unspoken rules, from debts twisted into shackles. Isadora leans forward, so close he can feel the faint chill of rain lingering on her gloves. "You will remain here," she says, "under my supervision. You will work where I assign you, speak only when permitted, and you will never again act beyond your station." Her voice never rises. Her cruelty does not roar. It whispers. Matteo meets her gaze steadily. His eyes are not pleading, not defeated. They hold a stillness that unsettles her more than defiance ever could. "I saved a life," he says softly. "Not a title." A pause follows. She stares at him, unblinking, as though searching for a crack in his resolve. She finds none. A delicate tension settles between them, quiet, sharp, unspoken. It is not a war. "Not yet." Isadora straightens, speaks only 3 final words. "Then you will learn." She leaves, and the guards return, tightening the ropes with unnecessary precision. Matteo sits unmoving, breathing steadily, holding a truth inside him like a buried ember. He knows now. The cruelty has just begun. But so has something else, something growing. She feared owing him her life, so she chose to own him instead. Dawn arrives without warmth. Matteo is laid out of the chamber and into the inner estate where laborers move like shadows, silent, controlled, never meeting a superior's gaze. The sky outside is gray, and the air inside is colder than the rain. No words greet him. Only instructions. Only tasks. A supervisor named Javier Mendoza stands with a ledger tucked to his chest. His voice clipped and monotone as he announces Matteo's new assignment: scullery duties, stable maintenance, and all errands requiring silence. Silence and order. Not a condition. He is given no uniform, only the damp clothes he wore while saving the mistress. His boots are soaked, mud clinging like memory. He is handed a brush, a bucket, and a set of chores meant for punishment, not labor. Yet he takes them without protest. His hands move without hesitation, though his wrists still ache from ropes that left deep. Raw impressions. The scullery is a cavern of echoes scraping tin plates. trickling water, and the low rumble of tasks being hurried through without spirit. Workers glance at him once, then turn away as if acknowledging him is unsafe. They've learned silence by choice. He must live it by order. Mateo scrubs the floor, the brush biting against stone with rhythmic force. Dirt, soot, leftovers from last night's feast, none of these matter. What matters is how long he must do it, how low he must bow while doing it, and how he must not speak, but he listens to hurried whispers between kitchen workers when they think the supervisors are gone. He hears murmurs from the stable hands about the new silent one who angered the Mistress. He hears the metallic clank from the upper hallways where the estate guards patrol as though guarding invisible treasure, he notices. Everything. Javier watches him with mild curiosity, as if expecting a complaint, a request, a spark of defiance. Yet Mateo says nothing. His silence isn't submission. It's observation. His mind, once focused on survival, now studies the gears of this place. Who commands, who obeys, who suffers silently, and why. In the afternoon, he is sent to the stables. Rain beats softly against the wooden walls, dripping through old cracks and forming small puddles where his reflection trembles. Horses snort uneasily, as if they too sense the estate's strain. Mateo tends to them carefully, brushing their coats, calming their nerves, cleaning stalls with deliberate precision. A stable hand passes by, glancing at his bruised wrists. A fleeting spark of empathy crosses her expression, but she looks away quickly. Compassion here is dangerous. He understands. As he works, the estate's bell tolls from afar, slow, deliberate, echoing through the corridors like a reminder that time is controlled here. Meals, labor, sleep, all dictated, all timed. Mateo straightens slowly, feeling his spine resist for the first time since the rescue. He remembers Isidora's voice. Then you will learn. But what does she truly fear? His action? His independence? His silence? The same hands that saved her are now scrubbing dirt from the hooves of frightened animals. The same voice that shouted her name in the fire must now remain quiet in a world ruled by her command. Yet Mateo does not feel broken. Something inside him sharpens with each task, each observation, each breath swallowed in silence. He learns the estate's secrets not from words but from patterns. How the staff avoids certain doors. How some ledgers are hidden beneath floorboards. How guards linger near the mistress's quarters as though expecting danger from within. Not outside. Every moment of forced silence becomes knowledge. By the time lanterns are lit for evening labor, Mateo has learned something more valuable than freedom. Power is not in voice alone, but in what one learns while others believe him voiceless. He lifts the bucket, shoulders tense, eyes steady. His chains are invisible now, and that makes them easier to break. They bound his voice, but they could not bind what he was starting to understand. Evening settles without warning. The sky outside dims, and lanterns are lit across the estate like watchful eyes, trembling in the rising wind. Mateo is summoned from the stables while his hands still smell faintly of hay and damp earth. A guard escorts him through the corridors, not harshly, but with the stiff posture of someone transporting a secret rather than a worker. The walk is long, winding through halls polished to perfection, past portraits that stare with painted authority. The guard says nothing. Mateo remains silent by command, not confusion. Steps echo behind him, familiar, rhythmic, controlled. Mistress Isidora follows them, though she maintains distance. It is the first time he has sensed her walking rather than seeing her appear as if conjured from control. They reach a small parlor lit by a single, narrow candle, its flames stretched thin by the draught, sneaking through the cracks in the old wood. Mateo is placed in the center, still bound by silence, though no ropes or guards restrain him now. The room smells faintly of dried lavender and old parchment, a contrast to the cold authority she wears like armor. Isidora finally steps closer. She observes him as one might examine a rare object that was never meant to be touched. For the first time since the fire, she speaks without accusation. "You saved my life in the presence of witnesses," she begins. Mateo remains still, noticing her choice of words. Witnesses, not danger, not gratitude, not fate. You acted publicly, she continues. You forced the estate to acknowledge something it is not equipped to endure, obligation from the powerless. Her tone is not angry. It's precise, heavy with calculation. She walks to a small cabinet and retrieves a folded cloth. When she unfurls it, Matteo sees its contents, a fine silver collar piece, decorative but unmistakably restrictive, not a chain. Not a shackle, but something symbolic, something visible. Workers here are loyal because they must be, she says. But you? You acted by choice. Choice breeds expectation, and expectation invites disruption. The collar is set on the table between them. Matteo looks at it, but he does not react. Isadora watches his face carefully, waiting for fear, resentment, or confusion. When she sees none, her voice lowers. You think your silence is strength, she says. But you do not understand how easily strength can be owned. Matteo's breathing remains steady. Shadows dance on the walls as the candle flickers, its flame bending like it's bowing to the storm outside. He finally speaks, a soft sentence aloud only because she hasn't forbidden it. I understand that the moment I saved you, something changed, not in me, in you. Her stare freezes. The flame quivers more violently, as though it has hurt him too. Isadora does not step back, but her posture tightens. His words have pressed against a truth she never intended to reveal. She is not cruel because he is beneath her. She is cruel because he unsettles her place above him. She lifts the silver collar with slow, deliberate fingers. The metal glints like cold moonlight. Your choices end here, she says. You will wear this. The estate will see you not as a savior, but as property restored to order. Matteo does not look away from her, not at the collar, not at the candle. Only at her. His gaze is quiet, unshaken, the very force she fears. When he speaks again, it is only 3 words, calm, but weighted enough to disturb the ground beneath her certainty. Order can break. The collar trembles in her grasp. The candle flickers toward darkness. The storm outside grows louder. She tried to mark him as owned, without realizing something in her was already starting to fracture. The silver collar rests against Matteo's neck, cold enough to dull the warmth of his skin. It is not heavy, not biting, not painful, that makes it worse. Cruelty that cuts is one thing, but cruelty wrapped in elegance, cruelty placed gently, cruelty that looks like a gift, that is a prison made of pride. Mistress Isadora fastens it herself, each click of the tiny clasps sounding like a lock on the past he once believed he understood. The collar fits perfectly, as if measured long before the fire. Matteo does not lift his hands, doesn't flinch, doesn't resist. His silence unsettles her more than panic ever could. The guards are not present now. She doesn't need them. Authority does not require force when fear is expected. There, she says softly. Now no one will misunderstand your place on this estate. Her fingers linger for a moment, not out of tenderness, but to make sure he feels the weight of what she has decided. A symbol, a declaration. A reminder that in saving her life he created a narrative she cannot control unless she reshapes it. But Matteo does not lower his eyes. He meets her gaze with the stillness of a man who sees further than she wants him to. And something flickers in her expression, a flash of irritation or fear or something more complicated. She steps back, reclaims her polished distance, and signals the attendants to open the parlor door. A maid named Elena Suarez, barely older than Matteo, stands there holding a folded garment. Her eyes widen when she sees the collar, but she masks her expression quickly. Still, her grip tightens on the cloth, wrinkling it. She understands what the collar means. Everyone does. Isadora gestures at the garment. He will wear this from now on. Let it signify his new duty. Elena bows her head and nods, though her throat tightens with unspoken protest. Matteo receives the garment without a word. It is simple, but pristine, pale fabric, fitted at the neck to accentuate the collar, designed to make it visible from a distance. A uniform not of respect, but display. He changes in silence under the watch of an attendant, then steps back into the parlor. The new clothes fit perfectly, yet the collar glitters like a chain disguised as silver honor. Isadora circles around him, studying him as though assessing a sculpture she has reshaped. A possession made clearer, a worker made visible. Order restored. But Matteo is not a man who hides behind silence anymore. His silence is now choice, not punishment, observation, not defeat. Isadora finally speaks, unaware of the storm she is fueling. People will no longer discuss your actions that night. They will see this and understand you are bound by my authority, not by your own impulse. Her voice is cool, final, confident. Matteo raises his chin slightly. Not in rebellion, but in acknowledgement of the truth beneath her words. They will see, he says slowly, that you needed this. The air tightens like a pulled thread ready to snap. Her composure fractures for a breath, barely a moment, but enough. The truth in his words lands like a stone in the quiet water of her power. She doesn't respond. Instead, she turns sharply to the window, watching the storm outside as if it offers escape from what she doesn't want to feel. Matteo bows slightly, not in obedience but in warning, and leaves when she gestures dismissively. The hallway swallows him, the silver collar catching every lantern's trembling light. Servants turn as he passes, eyes wide, questions burning behind fear. He walks without shame. The collar glints not as a symbol of submission, but as the mark of a woman scared of the man who saved her. She thought she had silenced him, but all she did was give his truth something impossible to ignore. Rain pelts the courtyard like 1,000 hurried feet fleeing from thunder. Matteo uses the storm as cover, carrying a bucket across the yard, an errand dull enough to draw no eyes, yet useful enough to bring him near the old servants' quarters where the lesser staff sleeps. It is here, through narrow windows and cracked shutters, that whispers travel more freely than in the grand hallways. He moves slowly, appearing obedient, laboring as expected. But he listens. Inside the dim corridor, voices murmur behind half-closed doors. The storm muffles most of it, but fragments reach him. Did you hear? They're saying he wants revenge. No, he saved her. That makes no sense. It makes all the sense. A man with honor is dangerous. Dangerous. Matteo almost smiles. They are not wrong. He bends over the bucket belt, adjusting straps he intentionally loosened earlier just to justify lingering near the shadows. His eyes scan the hallway, no guards yet. But there is always someone watching indirectly, always. A door creaks open to his left. Elena Suarez stands there, her apron soaked, her hair clinging to her temples. She had brought him that uniform. She was the first to see the collar's meaning. Her eyes now dart nervously down the hall before she steps closer. You shouldn't be here, she whispers. I'm working, Matteo replies mildly. You're listening. So are you? Her breath catches. She glances at the collar, that shining declaration of ownership, and her voice softens not out of pity, but fear of what it represents. You need to keep your head low for a while. She's unsettled by you. The more you stand tall, the more she tighten her grip. Matteo's gaze sharpens. A person only tightens their grip when something is slipping away. Those words make her swallow hard. She steps back slightly, suddenly aware she's too close to danger, yet too close to truth to retreat fully. You don't know how powerful she is, Elena whispers. I've seen powerful people burn, Matteo answers. That truth leaves them both in silence. The storm growls outside the window, wind slamming shutters against the walls like restless fists. Elena opens her mouth again, but then hurried footsteps echo down the hall. Elena immediately backs into her doorway, pretending to wipe spilled water from the floor. Matteo straightens, hoisting the bucket as though heading toward the stables. 2 guards pass. Heavy boots, dim lanterns. They don't look at him, not directly, but they do glance at the collar. The message is clear. He will never again move unnoticed. When they vanish into another corridor, Elena exhales shakily. She grips the broom until her knuckles whiten. They'll use it against you, she whispers, barely audible. Then they should have chosen iron instead of silver, Matteo replies. His tone is calm, but Elena shivers. Not from fear of him, fear for him. And maybe for all of them. He turns to leave. The storm opens its mouth again, roaring like it wants to swallow the estate whole. But before he steps outside, Elena's voice stops him. Matteo! Whatever you're planning, don't do it alone. He doesn't answer, he doesn't promise. He simply nods once, slowly, like a man acknowledging a debt or a prophecy. He walks into the rain, letting the storm soak his clothes, drench the collar, wash the polished shine from it. Lightning illuminates him for a brief moment, tall, silent, marked, not like a servant, like a threat waiting to be understood. A guard on the far side watches him too long, brow furrowed, whispers, rumors, half-truths, they all do their work. Iron bars don't always need to lock someone in. Sometimes they're meant to keep others out. Matteo keeps walking, the rain drowning every sound but the pulse of awakening rebellion beneath his skin. The whispers have begun, and whispers can become storms. Thunder rolls low over the estate, shaking the ancient timbers like a warning drum. Matteo carries a lantern through the servant corridors, its light trembling over stone walls slick with rain. Every step is deliberate, every breath measured. He senses it before he sees it, the subtle vibrations through the floorboards, the tension in the air that doesn't belong to the storm. Then, a sharp cracked glass splintering like distant screams. Matteo freezes, the lantern tilting in his hand. Windows in Mistress Isidora's private chambers shatter, jagged shards raining down, catching the candlelight and scattering it across the polished floor. The sound is deafening in the quiet of the night. Horses snort and stamp, disturbed by the chaos. The estate guards scramble, shouting commands that bounce off the stone walls like echoes in a tomb. Matteo's heart does not race. It has raced before when fire licked at Isidora's skirts, when iron cuffs bit into his wrists, but this moment is different. This is not chaos born of chance. This is targeted. Someone knows her. Someone wants her undone? He bolts toward the chambers, slipping past panicked servants and shouting guards. The lantern swings, painting walls with shadows, silhouettes twisted by fear and rain. Matteo bursts into the room just as a windstorm of shattered glass settles onto the carpet. Misty rain filters through the broken window, soaking Isidora's skirts. She stands frozen, her face pale, uncomprehending. The woman who once punished him for saving her now looks powerless. Instinct overtakes protocol. Matteo reaches her, lowering himself to shield her with his body as more shards rain down. Not in defiance of authority, not in rebellion, but because survival requires it. Hands press against her shoulders, pulling her close to the floor. "Stay down!" He commands, soft but firm, his voice almost swallowed by the storm outside. The attack ceases as suddenly as it began. Matteo's chest heaves, but he does not rise. He keeps her pressed close, eyes sweeping the shattered window frame, the scattered shards of glass, the overturned chair. Somewhere in the shadows, the estate guards regroup, but the room is silent, tense, expectant. When he finally allows himself to straighten, he realizes Isidora's hand has rested against his arm, hesitant, trembling. She does not pull away, yet she does not meet his eyes. For the first time, Matteo sees a flicker of something human beneath the cold authority. Fear, real, raw, undeniable fear. I thought I was careful," she murmurs, voice shaking as though afraid it will carry the blame. Matteo does not respond. Words are useless here. His silence is more precise, more protective than any sentence. The storm continues outside, but within the chamber, another storm brews, the one she refuses to admit exists inside herself. Her power, her cruelty, the chains she uses to control him, none of it can shield her from danger now. And for the first time, she sees that the man she punished for saving her life is the very one who ensures she survives the night. Finally, Matteo steps back, helping her rise. He does not expect gratitude, he never has. Instead, he lets her understand the unspoken truth. He has saved her again, and she owes nothing, not even acknowledgement. The weight of power shifts imperceptibly between them, not in chains, not in words, not in commands, but in the quiet knowledge that her life, once imperiled, remains intact because of him. She straightens, brushing damp hair from her face, trying to reclaim authority, trying to erase the tremor in her hands. But the subtle acknowledgement lingers. Fear, dependence, recognition. A truth she cannot speak. Matteo steps toward the doorway, lantern held high, surveying the shattered scene. Guards mutter to one another, too late to take command. The broken glass, the scattered rain, the chaos of the storm, everything speaks to the limits of control. As he disappears into the hallway, the candlelight flickers once more, casting elongated shadows along the walls. Mistress Isadora remains, standing amid shards of window and truth she cannot deny. He saved her life again, and for the first time, she could not pretend she didn't need him. The storm has passed, leaving the estate soaked in silence. Rain still drips from the eaves, each droplet striking the stone like a muted heartbeat. Matteo moves quietly through corridors that smell of damp timber and wax, the silver collar glinting faintly beneath the lantern's tremor. He has been given a measure of freedom since the night of shattered windows, not out of trust, but necessity. The mistress, unsettled, requires his presence closer to her chambers. He walks with measured steps, aware that even this freedom carries eyes. Behind a closed door, voices echo faintly. Matteo pauses, recognizing their cadence, the subtle tension that betrays fear and secrecy. He leans in without knocking, knowing that in this estate, knowledge travels fastest through observation, not inquiry. Inside, two clerks shuffle papers at a desk. Wax seals litter the floor, some melted in hurried flames. A ledger lies open, containing the faint trace of handwriting that seems deliberately obscured. Matteo reads the fragments, piecing together what she does not say aloud: a forged inheritance, lands taken through intimidation, families left destitute. Letters unopened, destroyed before their truth could reach her hands. Mistress Isadora has inherited more than wealth. She has inherited enemies. And the fire, the carriage accident, the shadows that have hunted her, none of it is coincidence. Someone knows, someone remembers, someone wants her life for reasons she cannot escape. Matteo steps back silently, heart steady. The truth settles in him like a spark igniting dry tinder. To save her again, he must understand her danger fully. Not as a punishment for her cruelty, but because survival demands foresight. The estate is a labyrinth of secrets, and only someone who listens without speaking can navigate it. He moves down the corridor to another chamber. Keys jingle in the distance. A guard approaches, but Matteo steps into a shadow, letting the man pass without noticing him. This estate is not merely held by walls or chains. It is held by fear, misinformation, and obedience. He begins to trace the patterns: who speaks, who avoids, who hides. Every gesture, every glance, every half-whisper contributes to a map that only patience can reveal. By nightfall, Matteo has pieced together more than documents can tell. He understands the subtle cruelty of Isadora not as caprice, but as defense. She punishes him not because he saved her, but because he reminds her that she is vulnerable. Every reprimand, every display of authority, every controlled act of humiliation is a shield for the secrets she cannot protect alone. He retreats to the servants' quarters for a brief respite. The collar weighs lightly now, but the knowledge he carries feels heavier. He thinks of Elena's whispered warnings, of the murmurs in the scullery, of the unstable rhythm of guards on patrol. Everything converges. Danger surrounds her, and her cruelty surrounds him. Yet, in the quiet, Matteo makes another observation: control has limits. Authority is a fragile veneer, and fear, though sharp, can be guided. If one understands both, one can redirect the tide without striking openly. He smiles faintly to himself, a secret reserved for the shadows. That night he watches Isadora pacing her chambers from the edge of the hallway. Candlelight flickers across her pale gloves. She clutches a sealed letter to her chest, unaware that her hands are shaking just slightly. Matteo does not move closer. He does not speak. But he sees what others cannot. She is trapped by inheritance, by expectation, by enemies beyond her sight. And he realizes that the fire that once burned her skirts was only the beginning. The true danger is subtle, silent, waiting for a misstep. But the same patience that allowed him to survive ropes, chains, and humiliation has sharpened him into something else, a quiet force capable of guiding the estate toward safety, without stepping into the open light. The danger she hid from the world now circles the estate, and only he knows how close it truly is. The evening settles quietly over the estate, but inside the chambers, silence is heavier than any storm. Matteo stands just beyond the edge of the candlelight, the silver collar glinting faintly against his dark clothes. For the first time in weeks, he has been allowed to sit in the presence of Mistress Isadora, without kneeling, without tasks, without chains. The room is small, intimate, and dimly lit. Shadows curl along the walls like watching spirits. The air is thick with unspoken truths. Isadora sits across from him, a high-backed chair separating them, but not her thoughts. Her posture is rigid, as if she fears the distance is too great to contain the weight of authority she has long worn like armor. Yet he notices the slight tremor of her fingers brushing against the armrest, the first sign of human vulnerability he has seen since the night of the fire. Matteo's voice breaks the quiet first, soft but precise, as if the words themselves are tools carefully chosen. "You do not need me as a servant," he says, watching her reaction. "You need me alive, because without that none of this estate survives." She flinches imperceptibly. Her eyes shift away, scanning the window panes streaked with the fading rain, avoiding his steady gaze. "I inherited more than wealth," she admits slowly, almost as if the words themselves are dangerous. "I inherited the consequences of my father's actions, not the crimes. Just their weight. And I do not know how to carry it without crushing those who serve me." Matteo leans forward slightly, elbows resting lightly on his knees. He studies her closely, noticing the faint shadows beneath her eyes, the pale hint of worry on her skin. "Then free those bound by his mistakes," he says quietly. "Not with punishment, not with chains of obligation or fear. Release them, and they will remember you differently. Not as the one who demands, but as the one who chooses justice." She stiffens, her lips pressing together. "If I do, they will not believe it is by choice," she murmurs. "They will think I am weak, that I am yielding to force, not principle." Matteo's eyes do not waver. He leans back slightly, the collar around his neck catching the flicker of the candlelight. "And if you do not?" he asks, calm, deliberate. "You will become the very man whose shadow you despise." Her breath hitches. The candlelight trembles as though responding to the tension in the room. Isadora's hands clench on the chair's armrest. The chains of inherited cruelty, the armor of power she wears, the masks of authority and command, for the first time, they seem fragile, threadbare. She swallows, eyes finally meeting his. In them, Matteo sees a flash of something raw, fear, not fear of him. Fear of what she must do, and fear of what she has allowed to grow unchecked. For the first time, she listens without planning a response, without armor, without pretense. "Perhaps," she whispers, voice low, "justice does not come from authority alone. Perhaps it comes from courage, from knowing when to release and when to act." Matteo nods once, no triumph, no judgment. Just acknowledgement. The quiet understanding that the slow work of justice begins in recognition of truth. Not punishment, not chains, not display, but acknowledgement of responsibility and the will to set it right. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, but inside, the storm has shifted. It no longer threatens the estate. It hums in the room, a witness to the delicate balance of power and conscience. Matteo rises slowly, careful not to disturb the fragile clarity of the moment. For the first time, Isadora does not call him back. She does not command him. She sits, shoulders heavy but unburdened, absorbing the quiet lesson he has delivered without words of instruction or threat. The silence now carries respect, understanding, and the potential for change. For the first time, she listens, and in listening, she begins to see the truth he has carried silently all along. The estate wakes to an unusual stillness. Morning sunlight filters through the tall windows, weak and gray, touching the corridors without warmth. Even the air seems measured, as if holding its breath in anticipation. Matteo moves among the servants, silver collar catching the dull light, observing everything, the way guards pace differently, the way whispered conversations taper off when he passes, the way Mistress Isadora walks without her usual rigid precision. Something is shifting. For weeks he has moved quietly, unnoticed, learning patterns, recording human habits, witnessing cracks in the authority she wields. Today, those cracks are more apparent than ever. Small gestures betray her anxiety, the way her gloves tremble as she straightens a candle, the way she glances over her shoulder more often than before, the faint pressure in her jaw when she speaks to the steward. Matteo notes all of it, his mind assembling a map of influence, fear, and vulnerability. He enters the scullery quietly, brushing past the workers. Their eyes lift fleetingly, curiosity barely masked by fear. Elena, standing over a tray of clean dishes, nods subtly. Her signal is small but clear. She understands. The knowledge he carries is becoming shared, quietly, without words. That knowledge alone feels like power. A sudden call from the upper hall draws his attention. Isadora is speaking, not angrily, but with a controlled urgency, addressing the entire staff. Matteo watches from the shadows as she gestures to the broken window from the previous storm. The words are careful, measured, a warning without threat. Yet there is a tremor beneath her composure that only he notices. Her authority is intact, but the foundation beneath it is quietly unstable. Matteo doesn't move. He doesn't speak. He simply observes. He has learned that true influence does not come from commands, but from patience and understanding of the hidden currents that guide people's choices. His collar glints faintly as he steps back into a darkened hallway, listening as servants murmur in hushed tones. That night, as the estate settles into candlelight, Matteo is summoned to the mistress's chambers. She does not raise her voice. She does not gesture. The room is tense, thick with unspoken questions and fragile trust. She watches him approach, eyes wary but not hostile. For the first time she allows him to enter without a task or an order, a quiet concession, subtle but significant. He bows slightly, more in acknowledgement than submission. "You summoned me?" he says softly. "Yes," she replies, voice steady but faintly strained. "I wish to understand what you have seen and what you know. I cannot govern what I cannot perceive." Matteo nods, no protest, no pride, just patience. "You have enemies within and beyond these walls," he says quietly. "Not all are loyal because of fear. Some act in shadows, waiting for opportunity, the fire, the carriage accident. They were warnings. There are forces you have not yet recognized." Isadora's face tightens, but her composure does not crack. She leans back, silent for a long moment, absorbing what he does not need to elaborate. The truth in his words is enough. The kind of truth that cannot be hidden, only ignored. The candle flickers, shadows stretching across the walls. Matteo studies her expression, noting the subtle shift, the beginning of humility, the acknowledgement that power is not absolute, that authority can be tested, and that sometimes justice requires listening before acting. Finally, he steps back toward the doorway, letting her hold the center of the room, letting her absorb the responsibility that comes with knowledge. Tonight the estate is calm, but the calm is fragile. The storm is never truly gone. It has only paused. Matteo leaves without a word. His steps echo softly against the polished zone. The candlelight flickers once more, highlighting the silver collar that binds him but does not define him. He walks through the halls, invisible yet present, a quiet force preparing for the moment when knowledge becomes action. The calm may deceive her, but he knows the storm is only gathering.